As Republicans around the country consider legislation to restrict voting, some corporate leaders are mapping out a plan to push back. This past Saturday, over 100 business leaders held a Zoom meeting to talk about voting rights. New York Times puts it this way. Several senior business leaders spoke forcefully about the need for companies to use their clout to oppose new state legislation that would make it harder to vote. Earlier today, our friend Stephanie Ruhle spoke to Yale professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, who organized the call.
They're across the political spectrum. The group was probably 65, 70% Republican, and they didn't all agree on what solutions they should follow. But they all were concerned about these voter restrictions, which most, if not all, saw as voter repression. But they also, you're exactly right, don't want politicians creating wedge issues. They don't want angry communities and finger-pointing workforces and hostile shareholders. That's the fabric of social society being torn apart is bad for business.
Let's talk about what Professor Sonnenfeld just said with Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator from the great state of Missouri, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, former lieutenant governor of the great state of Maryland, these days the host of the Michael Steele podcast. Friends, good evening, and thank you very much for coming on. Senator, how powerful are brand names, the kinds of companies and brands that are part of our lives when, say, voting rights are at stake?
I think it remains to be seen how influential they'll be. But make no mistake about it, Brian, there is some shaking of the foundations in terms of party affiliation of businesses. There has been a normal in this country that said if it is a big corporation, then it is Mitch McConnell's friend when it comes to funding campaigns. And this activism that Mitch McConnell is complaining about, it was born and bred in his office. He's the one who celebrated with balloons and confetti when the Supreme Court said that corporations are people and can give unlimited political donations under the First Amendment. But now the First Amendment, the worm is turned, and the First Amendment is freeing these corporations up to say what they think about protecting democracy, and Mitch doesn't like it so much. But I know this. I think we have gotten past the time that Republican leaders in business in America are now just looking to vote for Republicans.
Michael Steele, if there is a typical Republican left, the kind we used to define when the three of us were young, does corporate pushback make the average Republican sweat?
I don't think it makes the average Republican sweat. I mean, that's always been, the purview of the leadership and the senatorial committees and congressional committees. The average Republicans, they, at the end of the day, they pay attention to the things they're interested in. They pay attention to how they use their dollars to promote their advocacy and candidates they support. It is, to Claire's point, a new branch, a new branding, if you will, for corporations to kind of get out here in this space. But here's the problem for McConnell. What's he going to do about it? To Claire's point, they're using their First Amendment right that has been expressly given to them by the Supreme Court, right? So what are you going to say to them now? Because guess what? Their employees are voters. And there are a hell of a lot more of their voters working for them, or voters working for them, than are necessarily voting for McConnell in his state or that particular congressman in their district. So their interest is a lot broader. The power of their constituents, if you will, voters, consumers, goes a lot farther. It's not that, we're just going to boycott the Starbucks in my hometown. No, we're going to boycott the Starbucks in every hometown in America. And that's a very different conversation for a corporation than Mitch McConnell being worried about the voters in Kentucky or, Marjorie Taylor Greene being worried about the voters in her congressional district. So it's a new day for these guys. Still have to wait and see how it shapes out. But corporations have a lot more sway here than I think McConnell really would like to see them express.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.